Stetson, tell me how it came to be that Woody Guthrie spent time with you at this beautiful place here in Switzerland called Beluthahatchee.
It's curious, I've been relying on my memory, but just a few days ago I found in my files a letter from Woody. It was the first letter he wrote to me, and all the time I've been telling you interviewers that Alan Lomax loaned Woody a copy of my book about Mother Country, but it wasn't Lomax, it was Alan Sloan. It was a sidekick of Lomax.
Oh, really?
And so I'm correcting the record. It was Alan Sloan who gave Woody a copy of my first Palmetto Country. It came out in 1942. And I went on up to Manhattan, and I guess it was after the war in 1946. And so Woody and I corresponded prior to that time. But we didn't meet until I crossed the Mason-Dixon line.
Well, he wrote you because he admired the book.
Those statues of Sherman. I said, what in the name of God? What's that way you make a mark in the sand? Is which statue?
Right. But he liked your book. Is that what the deal was? And he contacted you, wrote you a letter.
Yes, it's inside the cabin here. The first room, as you notice coming in, I call the Woody room. And on the wall, among other things, there's a copy of the book jacket from my Palmetto Country. And Woody had taken the jacket off and wrote me a fan letter on the inside of the jacket and mailed it to me.
Oh, really?
And for a half century, everything, it was all lost. And then all of a sudden, recently, somebody got in touch with me and said they had the book, and Woody's writing all through it.
Oh, really? Really?
Exclamation points and so on. So it's locked up in the case in the Woody room, and the jacket is on the wall. So it's quite a story of a homecoming after a half century. The thing is back home here at Beluthahatchee.
And how did he come to visit you here?
In this letter I mentioned, he said, don't be surprised if I come staggering up to your place someday with my guitar and we'll have some good long talks. And it didn't happen just like that. Instead, I got a telephone call from the Greyhound bus station saying to come get him. And so I drove in to Jacksonville, and there was Woody lying on the sidewalk, sound asleep, daylight, and he'd sleep on the guitar case. And I woke him up, all the pedestrians stepping over him. They didn't know whether he was drunk or dead or, admiring how this white man just lie down on the sidewalk and go to sleep.
So you're saying the famous Woody Guthrie, one of the famous Woody Guthrie, one of the most famous people in the world, just laying on the street there in Jacksonville asleep.
And he stepped over. So I said, "Okay, Woody, where's your baggage?" And he just didn't answer me. He just started unbuttoning, kept on, and he was wearing 5 shirts, and that's all he had with him: a guitar and 5 shirts. So we brought him on out here. I was living in what you might call an abandoned Florida Motor Lines bus out here. And my father had acquired the property as a sort of hunting, fishing place. And he didn't like the socialite friends of his second wife. So instead of putting a neat little rustic cottage out on here, he put a bus and built a lean-to kitchen on it and a full-length screen porch. So that's where I was living, and that's where Woody came. And instead of sleeping in the bus, I had a jungle helmet from the Vietnam or something days of jungle fighting. They had a rubber top on them and a mosquito net. And so Woody just strung those out on these oak trees and slept in the hammock. So that's how it happened.
That was 1953?
No, it was back in the 40s.
Oh, so he came here several times.
The books are all wrong about the number of times that Woody was here because they're getting Ramblin' Jack Elliott as their only source. And Jack was with him almost always, but not quite. so the number, but he was here more often than the historians think. He was here by himself a number of times. But Ramblin' Jack usually did the driving, and they were together always.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, Jack, I think, was still a teenager, and he had just walked into Mermaid Avenue there and just laid down on the couch and never left. Just moved into the Guthrie home. And wherever Woody went, he went. And everything he sang just like Woody. And Woody used to say, he impersonated Woody to such an extent that Woody would say, he sounds more like me than I do.
Yeah.
Even when Woody's on stage, sometimes he'd all kinds of body language, and he'd do his head like this. And I discussed this with Jack recently. I said, "Do you think he had head lice, or what was this? What's this all about?" I don't think it was lice.
What is the deal with his guitar? He on his guitar, Woody's guitar, he had written the words, "This machine kills fascists."
That's correct. And there's a story, thereby hangs the tale. My next door neighbor, I was living in one place, and my neighbor in the house next door, we built our houses at the same time. An old classmate of mine, an attorney. And every time Woody would show up at Beluthahatchee, these helicopters, surveillance, would spend the days. The story was they're probably still looking for German subs. Just to burn gas. But anyway, it turned out when I got my FBI reports that they were concerned about Woody Guthrie being here. And so one day a couple of FBI agents went to my lawyer friend's office and asked about Woody. And finally, my friend Gerald Hart, Gerald said, "Well, do you know of any disloyal act that Woody ever committed?" And one of the guys reached into his briefcase and pulled out an 8x10 of Woody with that guitar saying, "This machine kills fascists." And that was the answer to the question: Has he committed any disloyal act? And of course, the politics of America was such at that time, we were so illiterate, we didn't know one thing from another, and still don't. But that's where the FBI was coming from back then.
Why would he single out fascists? What did fascists mean to Woody?
To Woody, well, we were in World War II, and that's what it was all supposed to be about. And the Americans who were doing the killing and dying didn't have that much information about, what they were like. Seemingly all wars, they don't much give a damn why they're killing. But
why was he saying this guitar, this machine kills fascists? Was he talking about his music?
The
freedom
to this extent. Somewhere in my files, I have a very rare item about an 8-page brochure entitled "Fascism," published by the United States Army Educational Branch or something. And the thing had no longer, it hadn't cooled off from the press before Congress got hold of it. And there's stuff in there about fascism and being an advanced capitalist, imperialist strong arm of capitalism or something. Anyway, Congress didn't like it, so they recalled it. But I've still got a copy. I don't know how many more copies survive. But Woody was very much into anti-fascism. There's a London magazine, sort of replica of, you may know about Southern Exposure magazine, published up at Chapel Hill. They took the name from my book, Southern Exposure,
Oh, okay.
And anyway, the Brits made a publishing one similar. Same idea, same inspiration. Anti-fascist, anti-racist. So they invited me to write an article about Woody, and so the title of my article is Woody Guthrie, Natural Born Anti-Fascist.
Natural Born Anti-Fascist.
Yeah, that's the title.
Do you have that essay somewhere?
Yes.
Oh, I'd like to see that. That'd be great.
So that's Woody and anti-fascism.
Was Woody a violent person, a peaceful person? Would he have been an advocate for peace?
Woody?
Woody, yeah. I mean, the real Woody Guthrie that you saw hanging out here.
Woody's one of his. Joe Klein in his biography said when he didn't really know Woody, he said he always thought of him as a little guy, a stand-up comic or something, and. Of course, Woody was a whole lot more than that. And the subject of peace, I remember he said that if we just take all the profit out of war, there wouldn't be any. Just as simple as that. And I think he was right. It's another example of Woody one-liners. He said. It's your world. Take it easy, but take it.
It's your world.
It's your world. Take it easy, but take it. So that's his formula for people power and what we need to be doing.
I know other performers like Pete Seeger. He put on his banjo, "This machine surrounds hate and forces it to surrender." Pete Seeger put that on his banjo heads all the time,
I think I think Woody started it, using the instrument itself as a political weapon. I remember another one of the things he said or wrote to me was, "Go on back up into your little room and grind out some more ammo."
Grind out some more ammo.
Grind out some more ammo. And I was always sending him things. As fast as I'd publish something, I'd send it to him. And in fact, this first letter that I mentioned a while ago, he's got a caption on it about Christian American or something. And this was a wild man out in Texas who had the bright idea that if we can't abolish the Wagner Act and collective bargaining rights in Congress, we just do it through the legislatures one at a time. And he started in Texas, and now we've got, it busted the union shop. That's exactly what happened. And when the first issue of that guy's thing came out, I tried to, the CIO took it very seriously and mass produced the article and distributed it. But the legislatures then, even more than now, and that's saying a lot, were, susceptible to local pressure and more reactionary.
But Woody Guthrie was a patriot.
He was a what?
A patriot.
Patriot.
A patriot. He was.
Yes, I was going to say this.
I mean, when he showed up with that guitar, people saw that. And that was like, there's an American, right? Because
but he sent him these things. He would sound off on them and mark them up and write all kinds of stuff in the margins. And I have quite a bit of it. And as you came through the Woody room, I think you saw the album of some 80 songs that just recently discovered. Woody had written into one of these yellow legal pads in the spring of '53. In 3 months' time, he wrote 80 songs. And they were about this place, Beluthahatchee, and about Florida and wildlife. One of the songs is Baby Buzzard. It's Baby Buzzard, Baby Buzzard, look over yonder in that limousine. Some of the rottenest stuff you ever seen. And that sort of thing, real Woody.
Did they have music to them all, or just the words?
You got another song in there called "Pussy is a Pretty Thing."
Yeah. Yeah. Pat was reading that earlier. Yeah.
I know you all want to jump up and run in there. It's not indexed. You'll have to look for it. In this 1953 spurt of real genius, in my opinion, the biographers have written him off at that point. They still are saying that his creative career ended before that. But here he was having a last fling down here. Mm-hmm. And, Woody was 41 in 53. He was 41 years old. And he brought this girl, Anik, from Hollywood. She was married to an actor or something. But she just told her husband, I'm going to Beluthahatchee with Woody. And so she came here, and she was 21, and he was 41. And I got back from Europe 8 years later. My African-American neighbors came over and, welcomed me back home. Said, what kind of people is that living here after you left? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, me and Sandy came over one Sunday morning, drove up and asked permission to go fishing. And him and her come out, both of them come out buck naked. Says, what kind of people you call that? I said, that's just Woody Guthrie.
That's just Woody Guthrie.
Yeah. So the legend is still, the nude couple walking all around through this tropical jungle there, swimming same way. Yeah.
What else do you remember about
Woody Guthrie that
Joe
people
Klein,
might be surprised? The biographer came here wanting to know, said, what did you and Woody talk about? And I said, we didn't do much talking. He said, why not? I said, well, because we knew we were in total agreement about everything. Oh, that sort of made Klein mad, I think. He didn't want to accept that as an answer. Klein said he came here to listen to the same bullfrogs that Woody had heard. Of course, in 50 years, there have been quite a few generations of bullfrogs. But their generations were making a fuss, all right. And Klein made me paddle them around at night and listen.
One of the things on the wall in there looks like something Woody wrote, advocating other artists to come here and create an artist colony out here. It seemed to be a dream of his.
Way back about 1948, when I first came here, my father died, and so I, in effect, inherited the place and brought out my sisters and brothers. They thought that I kept talking about the lake out there. They said, what do you mean lake? It's a snake pit, a snake bog. And sure enough, in the spring day, the first spring day, the water it looked like a can of worms. Snakes coming out to get warm. So they weren't far wrong. But anyway, I bought them out. And where were we?
And Woody had the idea, or you had an idea to make an artist colony?
Yeah, I drew up a piece of paper called Po' Boy Estates, like a po' boy sandwich. Oh. This is going to be Po' Boy Estates.
Po' Boy Estates.
Yeah. And you come and live off the land, and a co-op sort of thing, and inviting all the progressives. I ran an ad in the Guardian newspaper in New York for progressives to come down and rest up from their fray, gather strength to re-enter the struggle and so. And here come the FBI helicopters. And they thought, what was the name of the spy, a Soviet spy that was on the lam? And they were looking for him. Was it the name Eisler? Where did I get that name?
Famous
Was there Gerhard Eisler? Or is that some other guy?
Come on, Pat.
Anyway, German name on the lam. And it said he probably he probably saw that ad. So it was like that.
But
nothing here but bullfrogs and possums and coons.
Woody was the main artist, though, that came here and hung out.
Well, I was going to tell you that you asked about the thing on the wall. I sent Woody to Po' Boy Estates, and so the one on the wall got his writing all over it, about what a great idea. And then when they found these 80 songs here from 53, we found this one-page thing. See it? Anyway, this is one we found, with the songs, we found this thing.
Yeah.
And it's really a paraphrasing of the thing I'd written a half century earlier, the Po' Boy Steaks. But it's purely Woody. And recently, in 2009, I guess, the last Southern Exposure Folk Festival we held across the road here in a park, Arlo sang, and the whole family was here on stage and all singing. And what's the new one? Who's it? Is it Sarah Lee's child? It's almost a toddler, and she was singing. I mean, when she got her cue, she just came out from that line, grabbed that mic, and blah 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 blah, and back out the other line again. She had more stage presence than all the rest. And anyway, the whole Guthrie family came into the Guthrie room. Most of them, children and grandchildren, had never seen all this material and stuff, where Woody had, been. So Arlo, I reached up on the wall and pulled this down, and Arlo proceeded to read it with the whole family sitting around on the floor, all the kids, and every time it reads, giggling all the way through it.
Oh yeah, because it is something. It's classic Woody.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't see well enough to read it, and I don't really want to read any of it or not.
Well, so he had one in here. Let's see.
It's a prose poem, but it's a takeoff.
I'm trying to find the beginning of a sentence here. It's like the whole thing's one sentence almost. Let's see.
Place of freedom.
I've already trained this hurricaney wind to blow backwards for a few minutes when it hears me yell that same name out. And my next swamp neighbors, bloodhounds, bay in a new kind of voice that sounds like a peace yelp when they hear me out across here bawling out that word you call freedom. And I don't have the least bit of trouble causing my rabbits to stop and stand on their heads and my swarms of bumblebee bees to flump over and fly bass-ackwards with their tails to the ground and their bellies up toward the sun when they hear me screaming that word up in the skies around here. None of these tricks have dealt me 1 minute's lost time, lost energy, nor 1/2 a second's lost motion, like I told you. But being able to cause any of these headset Florida cracker folks or these people or these things that people call people, these things you call humans, to life so much as one little part of one little finger to bring us all another little drop or one more little bitty squirt of this stuff you call peace or this stuff you call freedom. Well, that'd be a lots easier job for me to do than it would be for me to just up and lift the Grand Coulee Dam right up out of its slick-side canyon and to life it all the way across the face of our map here and to set it right smack dab down here in the big muddy middle of this Beluthahatchee lake that Stetson Kennedy and the rest of us fell heir to.
How about that?
That was one sentence.
Wow.
That's what you call literature.
Yeah. In the last sentences, I mean to lift it off down here by my poor lonesome. That's how me and these mossy-headed neighbors of Stetson's are thinking and running and dwelling and eating and sleeping and living and getting along on this planet Earth ass of this third damned day of this month you call March in this damned year of our overworked Lord, 1953. Woody Guthrie, Beluthahatchee, Lake, Florida, 3353.
That's the date.
That thing it's a classic.
Another line in there you missed, but I can't forget. It says, Beluthahatchee is a place where you can stick your head in and your neck out.
Woody's almost like Yogi Berra.
They blame that kind of thing. They say that Huntington disease makes guys talk like that. But, and I suppose it's true. I've read it in a serious journal, that pornography and that kind. They put him in jail in California for writing that kind of stuff. He put it in the mail to some girl, and her father got hold of it, and the father put him in jail. But it was, he couldn't help it.
Yeah, no, I know.
It was that disease. It wasn't Woody.
Why do you think? Tell us what you think about Woody. Why he would scrawl those words on his guitar. This machine kills fascists. And he had that guitar right down here, didn't he?
Hmm.
He had that guitar right here.
Do I have it? No.
No, I mean, but Woody had it here when he was here, yeah.
He always had a guitar, of course. And he and Ramblin' Jack would sit around the campfire and play into the night. Woody is a very, the ultimate political animal. Somebody said Americans are the most politically illiterate industrial people on the face of the earth. And Woody, of course, was the big exception to that. He was 200% political. Everything he said and did, thought. I don't know. Like I say, we're talking about World War II, which is supposed to be against fascism and Nazism, and some of us were aware of that fact. And Woody, above all, I remember he wrote somewhere about Marjorie. He was not in service at that point, but he saw an ad or something for dishwashers wanted on a Liberty ship. And he says, woman a-crying, me a-flying, out the door and down the line. He went down and signed up as a dishwasher on a Liberty ship. So ships all around him being torpedoed, and he wrote all these songs about it. Cisco was with him. And the story was, I believe Woody was on a ship that was torpedoed, and Woody grabbed his guitar down in the hole. And while everybody getting up that gangway and getting up on deck, he was there playing the guitar. That's anti-fascism. Trying to keep the crew alive.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I'd not heard that story before about Woody playing the guitar during the middle of an attack, a torpedo attack.
I forget where I get it, but it's in my brain somewhere. Yeah.
This machine kills fascists.
Yes. And the British public likes that too, They're still talking fascism. You never hear the word here. It's one of those, things that have been, it's an Orwellian state-of-the-art thing. It's a taboo word because you don't want anybody to know or think about such things.
But for some people wonder about the word kill. Some people say they don't want to, they wouldn't want to see a picture of that guitar on the front of this CD because it has the word kill in it. What do you think about that? He wasn't talking about just going out there and murdering somebody. It was a political statement.
Well, when any political system comes into being and arms itself to the teeth and it begins launching aggressive wars, and eventually you find yourself involved with sneak attacks like Pearl Harbor, then no question about the use of the word killed. It's a matter of kill or be killed. It's very simple. And Hitler boasted of his 1,000-year Reich dominion, super race over the world, really. Specifically, Goebbels used to say that when the German Luftwaffe Air Force is bivouacked in the skyscrapers of New York, said, he wrote this in a letter to J.B. Stoner, our Klan leader in Tennessee. Said, we're going to come over there, our doctors will fix your game leg. When the Luftwaffe is settled down in New York, our surgeons will take care of your game leg for you. But he said, you're a true racist.
Hitler wrote that letter to... Huh? Hitler wrote that letter to who? Stoner?
J.B. Stoner. He was Kliegel of the Klan in Tennessee at the age of 17 when I first interviewed him. And later he was the #1 coordinator of dynamiting and assassination for the Klan and other racists. The Birmingham bombings. He was right here in Jacksonville. A friend of mine became an FBI agent, but he was also a Klansman. He was telling me about how JB, he put him up when he was in Jacksonville. And the whole time he's there at his home, JB's on the phone with Birmingham talking dynamite. He said, he pretends the guy said, I didn't really listen, I don't know. You know, I suppose he didn't want to say that he knew about some of the bombings in advance and didn't report them. But in any case, that's JB. JB's worth mentioning in terms of the, you know, he thought we ought to be more efficient than Hitler in disposing of the Jews. And furthermore, he supported the American war effort because he felt that he resented Hitler's attempt to get rid of our Jewish force. That every nation had a right to get rid of its own Jews. And that kind of demented,
really,
you know, brilliance. As for blacks, he said, I have nothing against niggers as individuals. No, as a race. No, wait a minute. I have nothing against niggers as individuals, only as a race. You know, they can't help being what they are. And for them, he was going to ship them all back to Africa with time bombs on the ships as an economy measure.
Oh, God.
Back to Woody. I remember we were down at the Crossroads Country Store one day, and some black kids playing around the store. And Woody, in a loud voice, says, you know, I think little colored kids is a whole lot prettier than little white kids, don't you? And here's this store full of rednecks, Klansmen, kind of. Well, so I just got out as fast as I could. And he was doing things like that all the time. And these things you were reading, he's still writing that way.
He's trying to agitate.
You know, it's I think a profound aspect of Woody. He was always talking about my people, and he talked about Pushkin and Whitman. What was he saying? He said that those people are all thinking the right thoughts, meaning Pushkin and Whitman and Sandberg. He said, but they're not thinking and talking the way my people think and talk. So I reckon I'll just have to keep on trying to outpush Pushkin and outwit Whitman and Sandberg. But what I was getting at is, this is the way he felt about the American people, and he was so keen on us that when Alan was in London during this period of the 50s, and I was all over Europe, and we were trying to get Woody to come over, and he just didn't, you know, his place was in America, and he just didn't care that much about getting over. And I was going to think there's something about I was going to say that, you know, anybody that keen on us Americans, and then he comes south, and for the first time really exposed to Southern racism, and it all happened right here. This was his base, and so he was obliged to amend his, you know, feelings about us Americans. It is a bunch of us sons of bitches. And so that shows up in his work down here, and I can't help but wonder how much of a pain that must have given him to have to modify his you know, unqualified love for the American people, the things he was seeing here in the South. And I guess, thank God that he's not around to see what we're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places, you know, shock and awing people that never did anything to us. Carpet bombing and all the rest of it. Those are Americans, and they're not Southerners. They've come from all over the country. No questions asked. If Woody were here, he'd be asking questions.
When was the last time you saw Woody Guthrie? The last time you talked to him?
I don't remember. When I got back from overseas, he was almost gone in a hospital over in Jersey, I believe. And I just couldn't get up the guts to go tell him goodbye, you know. I just didn't do it. I kept putting it off, and suddenly he was gone.
Well, you had to go into exile. You had to go into exile over to Paris, right, or overseas for a while.
Did I?
I mean, you had to go over. You were being threatened. Couldn't get your books published over here. What years were you over there in Europe?
Well, there's a good deal in print to the effect I was in exile, or the Klan was after me, or the un-American activities of McCarthy or somebody, and I had to go. But the truth is that I was here working out here in this mud, and crawled out and read in the local paper a little squib about United Nations Commission on Forced Labor had met in New York, and it was adjourning sine die because there had been no witnesses forthcoming as to any forced labor anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. And there had been years, of course, in Europe doing things over there, but no forced labor in the Western Hemisphere. So I sent him a telegram telling him that if it would not adjourn, I would bring a plane load of forced laborers up the following day. And they wired back that they had already adjourned, but that if I could get to Geneva, Switzerland, I was living here in Switzerland, Florida was my mail address, from Switzerland, Florida to Geneva, Switzerland, in 10 days at my own expense, that they would hear me as an expert witness.
Stetson, where did you get the name Beluthahatchee? Where'd that come from?
From Zora Neale Hurston. When I was directing, I was her boss on the Writers Project, the WPA Writers, back in the 30s. And one of the things she turned in was Beluthahatchee. Well, she turned in a lot of mythical Florida places, like Czar is a place way on the other side of Far, and things like that. And so Beluthahatchee was a mythical place where all unpleasantness and friction is forgiven and forgotten, and harmony reigns supreme.
Oh.
And she's talking about, well, that's what she told me, and I said, give me an example. She says, well, like when the woman says to her husband, what about that blonde I caught you with in 27? And he says, well, oh, honey, I thought that was in Beluthahatchee, meaning gone and forgotten. And so I thought that'd be a good name for this place, because when I was first began working out here with my chainsaw, some truck driver came driving up cussing me about something. And right in the middle of a cuss word, he just looks around and stopped cussing. And so I'm building this place that way. We've got this meeting hall here. It's called Beluthahatchee Park now, and it's a part of the Florida Forever network of such places. And we're inviting both public and private agencies to conduct their meetings here, especially a reconciliation type, the multicultural, that sort of theme. And that's the big idea. We're calling the place next to a Harmony House. And I've established a library there, a couple of thousand volumes to serve as a resource. And of course the Woody Room will be a major aspect of all this. There's a lot more I can tell you about the Indian roots stuff about Beluthahatchee, but we don't need it.
I was going to ask you about the picture, about the photograph that you took of Woody.
Oh.
Where was that taken, and what's the circumstances?
Yes, speaking of, working out here with my chainsaw, it was a jungle, and trees as large as you can see the size of this one, and the ones across the lake there, the entire area, you couldn't see any sky.
this way to the camera. Yeah.
You couldn't see the sky, and every time I'd cut a tree, there'd come a little piece of blue up in the canopy, and I did 20 acres of that.
Wow.
And it took me a good many years all by myself, and getting pinned down in the mud, the wind would change and blow the tree on top of me instead of where I intended it to go. But this tree I'd cut, and somehow when I saw it, I hollered, "Woody, grab your guitar and get out on that log." And that's what he did. And I had to get out in the mud up to my neck over in here somewhere to take the picture.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep. Great photo.
It's got a historical quality to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like iconic almost picture, you know.
The what was the name of a large musical group that toured the entire country for years, singing only Woody things. It was anyway. It wound up down at St. Pete as a final concert after years of playing across the country, and I was in the area, and they invited me to attend, and at the end to say a few words. And I forget what else I said, but among other things I said, there will never be a generation which will not need to hear what Woody had to say.
So when you left to go to Europe, that's the last time you saw Woody Guthrie? Because when you came back, he was sick in the hospital, right?
Yeah, we missed connections, as a matter of fact. This thing came up very suddenly about going to Europe. Here I was totally penniless, as usual, as always, I should say. And I had to get to Geneva, Switzerland on my own expense. So I hitchhiked to Miami. And in Miami, I had friends in the Black Baptist Church, and they had a Black Ministerial Alliance, and they called an emergency meeting. And I remember one preacher pulling out a $5 bill, and my host says, "Hell, we can't buy freedom for $5. So I'm going back to my congregation and take up a love offering." And that's how I got the money to get to Manhattan, and then some labor people got me a one-way ticket with $8 left over. And it was dead of winter, and I didn't have an overcoat, and a Florida boy. And one guy was seeing me off, a friend, big guy. So when he saw I didn't have an overcoat, he took it off and put it on me. And you couldn't see my hands, and it was sort of touching the ground. It was that big. So when I got off the plane in Geneva, the CIA agents standing all around looked me over, you know. And they couldn't help from laughing at the little guy in a big overcoat.
I don't know. It just seems weird to think about Stetson Kennedy hitchhiking to Miami, Woody Guthrie laying on the street in Jacksonville. You know, these famous writers, but they're just...
You know, I was struck by the fact I got all over Europe, both east and west, and I was in house arrest, no matter which side of the curtain I was on. They'd probably lock me up or put me in an expensive hotel and tell me not to move, pay the bill. But they knew about Woody. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine in France he wasn't exactly a disc jockey. He had a scholarly folk song thing about like you were, and so everybody in Normandy knew all about Pete and Woody and the whole gang, people's songs.
Really?
And I was driving through the town in Normandy, and storefront thing there with a great big poster saying "Juke Tonight." So both Juke and Woody were very much, and I remember the spelling in, I forget what language I was into, some Slavic language, but they were trying to put Woody's name, and he spelled him Woody, V-U-D-I, Woody, Guthrie, G-A-F-F-R-Y, Woody Guthrie.
But you know, it works.
Yeah. They knew who he was.
It worked.
So he's well known. And of course, the time came when people over there looking for a change we're singing in the streets, we shall overcome. And it shows the power of song, in my opinion, in the world of politics and bringing about change. I think of Pete Seeger, singing his lungs out his entire life. And I've been, typing my fingertips off. So playing each different sides of the street, same street. But I can't help but think, in fact, I've established this is going to be the inaugural year of an award which my foundation has established through the Oral History Association. It's meeting in Atlanta next month. I'll be making the first award for oral history books, the book of the year, so to speak, that does most to feature the lives of people who have been on the cutting edge of change. So, and a great deal of interest in people submitting and a lot of competition. I wish I could give more than one award. There's so many good interests. But what I was getting at is, I think my vote is going to go for a book by Dunaway about Pete Seeger and people's songs and all this, protest songs. There's another one of the other interests that has to do with the International Longshoremen's Union, and it attempts to what was the guy's name? The longshoreman leader, Harry.
I don't know.
Anyway, a union book, and so I'm casting my vote for the songbook because I think it's on the cutting edge of protest against things that are evil things, in the hope of getting some of it replaced with something good. And whereas a union organizer and an activist are slightly different, and it's union guys single focused on organizing union and getting union benefits, whereas a general protest song singer and activist like Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, they were looking for change across the board. And so that's why my vote's going for the songbook. Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you so much for inviting us out here to hang out where Woody hung out, Beautiful day here in Switzerland today.
Isn't this an incredible day?
I only have a few minutes of tape left, but there's one question I'd like to ask you.
Right.
And that is what was the very first incident that caused you to start down the path that you went down? What made you go that way?
All you guys ask that question, I'm still looking for an answer,
Okay, well, that's the answer.
That's the oral historian for you in journalism. How come? And in high school, Robert E. Lee High School, of course.
Okay, and what year was that when you were in high school?
Lee High would be like 31 or 32.
Okay.
So they were asking, what got into step? Same question. When I get the question in an audience, I've been saying that ask not what got into step, but rather what got into America to have embraced such evils as chattel slavery and Jim Crow segregation for so many generations. So that's one answer.
Well, that's a great answer.
The guy upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you what we got here. The guy upstairs has gone to Tampa. So there's a double bed upstairs, and this couch opens up into a double. And there are a bunch of single folded cots in the next door building.
There's 4 of us, right?
5. Oh no, 4. Yeah, because these guys have somewhere to sleep.
Well, they live.
Yeah.
Y'all can sleep together. You got 2 double beds, or single cots over there that you could either sleep over there.
Well, we probably will.
Or bring over here.
He knows how to do it.
I was going to stay over, but you need the space and stuff, and I'll just come on back tomorrow. I wish we could catch a thing tonight, but myself is not up to it. I pass out, you know, my bedtime is sundown. So Sandra's going to pick me up.
Oh, okay. Okay. They want me to read this. So let me read it.
If you get the whole thing, you can tie it together.
Yeah.
It's a real...
Beluthahatchee, Place of Freedom by Woody Guthrie. Beluthahatchee is the Indian name that Stetson Kennedy picked for this 50-acre spot of swampy land country around this neck of the woods by the name of Florida. I am dwelling now under the impression that the name Beluthahatchee means spot of freedom, or a place in our 48 states where you can still come down and stick your head in and your neck out and still see or smell, or nearly see and almost smell, a pretty good whiffle of that stuff I still hear traveling by the name of freedom. If the Indian name does mean a place of freedom, or a little spot of freedom, that's fine and dandy with me. And if it don't mean that, then by golly's right here and right about now I'm changing her around to where she does. I say our poor country has been suffering under the pains and aches now for, these past few and several years. I mean, suffering under the strains and pressures of a great and vast shortage of these places and these here spots up and down and all along, which we can rightly call off and sound off to be real true places where freedom sure enough lives, where me and you and him and her and almost everybody here in our midst and middlings can see it and can recognize it and can know it by sight and at a quick glance. If I'd seen even one single little spot as big as Kennedy's 50-acre mossy patch here in all of my in and outer travelings, which I could swear and could cow to be free enough to please me, my last and my next 497 long and short books would be just about that one little spot I'd seen. But it's awful hard for me to write about something I've seen and known and felt and lived with at first hand, and then 100 times more harder for me to write to you about any such of a freedom patch or any such a freedom garden, any kind of a freedom field, freedom orchard, freedom street, freedom town, freedom city, freedom mortuary, freedom cemetery, freedom place of any old caliber, which, I've already told you, I've just not ever seen. Stetson lakey trees around here are swung and hung with some of the sexiest Spanish moss I've nearly ever seen, and I've even trained all these game fish in his government-stocked lake to jump up over the barks of 3 sunclogs when I stand out here on this bank and holler that name fairly loud, freedom. And I've already trained in this hurricane wind to blow backwards for a few minutes when it hears me yell that same name out, and my next swamp neighbor's bloodhounds bay in a new kind of voice that sounds like a peace yelp when they hear me out across here bawling out that word you call freedom. And I don't have the least bit of trouble causing my rabbits to stop and stand on their heads, and my swarms of bumblebee bees to flump over and fly bass-ackwards with their tails to the ground and their bellies up toward the sun when they hear me screaming that word up in the skies around here. None of these tricks have dealt me 1 minute's lost time, lost energy, nor 1/2 a second's lost motion, like I told you. But being able to cause any of these headset Florida cracker folks, or these people, or these things that people call people, these things you call humans to life, so much as one little part of one little finger to bring us all another little drop or more, little bitty squirt of this stuff you call peace or this stuff you call freedom, well, that'd be a lot easier for me to do than it would be for me to just up and lift that Grand Coulee Dam right up out of its slick side canyon and to life it all the way across the face of our map here and to set it right smack dab down here in the big muddy middle of this Beluthahatchee lake that Stetson Kennedy and the rest of us all fell heir to. I mean to lift it off down here all by my poor lonesome. That's how me and these mossy-headed neighbors of Stetson's are thinking and running and dwelling and eating and sleeping and living and getting along on this planet Earth, of this 3rd damn day of this month you call March in this damnable year of our overworked lard, 1953. Woody Guthrie, Beluthahatchee, Lake, Florida, 3353.